sunset and evening star, and one clear call for me. And may there be no moaning of the bar when I put out to sea. But such a tide as moving seems asleep, too full for sound and foam, when that which drew from out the boundless deep turns again home. Twilight and evening bell, and after that the dark. And may there be no sadness of farewell when I embark. For though from out our bourne of time and place the flood may bear me far, I hope to see my pilot face to face when I have crossed the bar.
Hello and welcome to The Bad Spot and part 16 of the Last Starmarked, my Sundered Isles campaign. And yes, this is the finale of this block of episodes, with this, our second block of 8, now complete, just in time for public access to begin next week. And I'm sorry everyone, but you can blame YouTube for forcing me into this, because the blessed algorithm absolutely cannot handle me playing two different games at once, it seems. So we are going to pick up with Gideon and Lorenzo again in the new year. At the top of the episode, you will have heard an excerpt from the sea shanty Crossing the Bar, read by Kim Dalton. Kim is a Los Angeles-based actor, singer, and burlesque performer. When not on stage, she is one half of the team behind the actual play podcast Kitten Marlowe, where she is currently GMing a campaign of the gothic horror TTRPG that I've never heard of, called The Between. Kim is also the co-author of A City in Eternal Twilight, an upcoming Carl from Brindlewood game set in the Gilded Age of New York City. She has a deep love for all things dark, horrific, and romantic, and has, on many occasions, been likened to a haunted doll. And Kim rounds out the wonderful roster of voice talent that have worked on this block of episodes. Just look at them. Look at them all here, and now look at them all alongside those from the first block. What a rogues gallery of talent. And everyone I am casting for the next block in 2026. So if you are a voice actor or performer and you want to read me a bit of a sea shanty, then I want to hear from you. The work is quick, it's easy, and it's paid, and many of the performers have waived their fees, choosing instead to have me donate them to a charitable cause. So far, these wonderful people over 16 episodes have raised money for incredible causes such as the Trevor Project, Trans Lifeline, the PCRF, and the ACLU. If you want to get involved, then all the contact details are in the down below, and whilst you're rooting around down there, why don't you leave a like, subscribe, and click the little bell icon so you can follow along with the campaign each and every week. These things are really important for supporting the channel and supporting what I do, and if you really want to go the extra mile and help fund this nonsense, then why not check out the Bad Spot Patreon. There you'll get early ad-free access to all episodes, exclusive behind-the-scenes content, and your name on screen, like these lovely people. Last time out, we saw the Circle of Silent Hands fighting a raging storm, struggling to keep their heavily armed hot air balloon in the air. We see who we assume to be their leader watching a dot on a screen grow larger and brighter as they appear to be closing in on their target. Meanwhile, back on Navini, an island now unrecognizable after inexplicably being swallowed by the sea, Gideon and Lorenzo awake in the hands of a mighty statue. Harrington has also made it to this stony refuge, and we see her decrypting the message from the ebb tide that Gideon was unable to read on the voyage over. The message relays news that Felicity Devereaux is closer than Gideon thinks, and we now know this to be the Isle of Navini, where the warship exchange he was about to make was supposed to happen. Harrington claims to have been in pursuit of the Crown of Tides and had learned that the facsimile in the hold of the perilous venture was indeed fake, although her motives for not attempting to steal the real one from Gideon remain unclear. They make their way back to the lagoon on a makeshift raft, where they find the boats used by the security detail to row ashore still there. They make it back to the perilous venture, only to find it seemingly deserted. Down in the hold, they uncover a horrifying scene. The remaining crew all dead, eyes bleeding, kneeling before the strange book they recovered when they brought the shipwrecked man aboard several days earlier. The book's mysterious, ever-changing pages now reveal Navini's new shape and also show the events of the past few days in its ever-shifting glyphs and symbols. This scene is disturbed, however, as Felicity Devereaux surfaces in the stolen submersible. She exits through a hatch onto the deck, looking as if she has had to fight for her very life, and we see her dispatch one final attacker before she collapses in a ragged, injured heap. At the same time, the stone sarcophagi of the night ships float to the surface, and a group of thralls start pulling them towards the perilous venture, and they begin to crack open. To compound matters, the circle of silent hands arrive in their hot air balloon, ready to wreak havoc from above. So, yeah, it's all coming to a head, isn't it? There was a lot going on there. I did enjoy the way that I was able to kind of converge those things all on one point. I don't think Gideon is enjoying it as much as I did, because it's certainly getting a lot worse for him. But before we crack on, do we have anything that we need to mark by way of progress? And looking at it, I think we do. We have progress not on any quests, because we don't have any active quests apart from our background vow. But we need to mark progress on the relationship, because finding Felicity was a vow sworn to Governess McCabe all those episodes ago. And we've completed that now, so we can mark progress on that relationship. And I think that might be it. And if it is, then great, because with that out of the way, let's begin. Gideon has to act, he has to do something. There are vampires coming aboard. The Circle of Silent Hands are in a heavily armed hot air balloon. All of the Perilous Venture's crew are dead. He's unarmed, Harrington's unarmed. But through all this kind of carnage and all these things that are going wrong and all these odds that are stacking up against him, he is just focused on one thing. He is focused on Felicity. He sees her kind of collapsed on the deck of the submersible, and she's done, she's beaten, she is broken. But he has to get to her. Cinder is burning brightest in the sky, bathing the scene in pink. The whole thing looks like recently chummed water. I think this could get messy, and it very much feels like a fight, maybe not to defeat an enemy, because we're so on the back foot, but I think this is definitely a fight to survive. And luckily, Starforged, and hence Sundered Isles rules, support this, because combats or fights are objective based. So I think we're going to start combat, and we're going to make the move Enter the Fray, which says when you initiate combat or are forced into a fight, which we very much are, envision your objective and give it a rank. So I think this objective is very simple. I think that Gideon just wants to get Felicity to safety. And I think to try and keep it punchy and kind of quick, we're going to make it dangerous. Then the move says, then roll to see if you are in control. And then it gives us a bunch of options. We are definitely caught in a trap or sizing up the situation. So let's enter the fray. Rolling plus wits. Okay, that's a weak hit. We'll take it. It says on a strong hit, we take both. On a weak hit, we get to choose one of these. We can either take the momentum or we get to take being in control. Now, somewhat controversially, I think here, because I think that this is going to require quite a lot of high stakes moves, right? I actually think, and it feels narratively appropriate as well, I actually think I'm going to take the momentum, because being in control in this situation seems narratively odd. We are for all the reasons I stated earlier, of being unarmed, being surrounded by vampires, and having a military warship moving in. and having no crew to back us up, like that's pretty much on the as much on the back foot as you can get, right? So and I also think that I think there's going to be a lot of high stakes moves, we could really do with the momentum to burn if one goes wrong, because they inevitably go wrong. So I'm going to take the momentum, which bumps us up to 7. But by doing this, we have chosen to voluntarily be in a bad spot. So this is how we're going to begin. The distance between the submersible and the perilous venture is like, I don't know, like 100 meters or so. And the airship is kind of coming down from behind the submersible. The submersible is between the perilous venture and the airship, but not for long, because the airship is descending quickly and it's moving very fast. And it has opened fire on the submersible, like its cannons are raging, and the kind of shots smash into the deck where Felicity is, and kind of blow away the handrails that you kind of use to kind of stand upright on the deck. But she's unharmed. She's kind of like rolls out of the way, and I see the smoke rising, and Gideon sees her, thankfully still alive after this initial like kind of barrage, this impressive display of firepower. And Harrington looks kind of worried, and Gideon looks at her and says, "At least they're not after us." And like literally as soon as that sentence finishes, the airship opens fire on the perilous venture. There's this kind of multi-barreled rotary cannon that comes down, this kind of hand-cranked thing, and it unleashes this absolute torrent of fire. And the thralls that were kind of climbing up the cargo net, the ones who are pulling the sarcophagus out of the water and trying to get on board the perilous venture, they get to the top of the hull and are about to climb onto the deck, but I think that gunfire just kind of evaporates them, in a cloud of misted blood. But that gunfire, because obviously the ship is still moving, this airship is still moving, it kind of smashes across the hull, and it just absolutely obliterates the decking, and splinters and wood goes everywhere. And we see that's actually separated Gideon and Harrington, like they're on either side of this massive gap that's been kind of carved or gouged out of the deck, right? And the balloon just kind of flies by overhead, and Gideon watches it as it begins to wheel around slowly. And on board, we can't see this, but the crew are frantically reloading, and their leader, that bald woman with the tattoos, like she's barking orders as they come in for another strafing run, and she pulls this lever, right? And the balloon just kind of drops a little in altitude, and it drops because like this wrecking ball on a massive chain is kind of almost like a morning star, this jagged club head that's swinging on a chain drops down below it, and it's gonna basically smash everything that it touches to pieces. And the balloon hurtles towards the perilous venture, and Gideon and Lorenzo are just kind of get out of the way of this. Like they have sort of a plan, I think, and they start kind of scampering up the rigging on the main mast, and Harrington is kind of left on the deck, and as Harrington is left, she kind of watches Gideon and Lorenzo going, but like the gap is too large, right, for her to cross safely. And a thrall kind of comes lumbering up onto the side of the deck, and kind of looks dumbly at Harrington. But then kind of like she pulls that obsidian blade, the one that constantly weeps blood, the one that she found just outside the court of the Sunken Queen. Like she holds it out to the thrall, and the thrall seems to kind of recognize it and kind of pause, which is odd in and of itself, but it's only momentary. And after it kind of does whatever calculations its brain is capable of, it just comes in for her, just kind of groping its arms, going for her, trying to kind of grab her and pull her down. But she ducks easily out of the way, and she kind of drags the blade across this thing's stomach, and it kind of sends it tumbling down into that gap that has just been smashed in the deck by the gunfire. And we see this thrall fall through the floors, and we see it land in a heap down in the cargo hold, down where the rest of the crew have been left, where they're left kind of kneeling, their eyes bleeding. But there's one pretty important detail that I want to make clear here, and that is that the book is gone. Back on deck, the phasing shape of a vampire comes into view, stood in front of Harrington. Again, she holds the blade outstretched, and this thing sort of just kind of sputters into life. It's there and then it's not. It's hard to see, especially in the kind of the dim moonlight. And Harrington kind of almost instinctively looks up to where Gideon and Lorenzo are, and that's when the vampire shifts its focus, and it literally shifts across the gap, and we see it appear on the netting, following Gideon and Lorenzo up to wherever they're going, to whatever kind of vantage point they're after. And I think Gideon, who's like broken rib, and you know, the fight with the Guardian of the Salt Path was not that long ago. He hasn't really recovered. You know, his ribs starting to bother him as he climbs. Lorenzo's making much shorter work of it, but Lorenzo shrieks as he sees this form shifting into his vision behind, and Gideon looks back and sees it, and we see for the first time really what one of these vampires looks like. But they're so temporary, they kind of just phase in and out, but we see enough to see this kind of like contorted face driven by blood, rage, hunger. We see fangs, we see these wild eyes and these claws searching for a victim, searching for Gideon. So what actually is Gideon's plan here? Because he has to have one. And I think it involves the hot air balloon, right? I think he's going to try and board it from this high vantage point. And this is definitely going to be a move, right? This is going to be react under fire, which says when you are in a bad spot and take action in a fight to avoid danger or overcome an obstacle, envision your approach and roll. And this is very obviously changing a plan, finding a way out, or cleverly bypassing an obstacle. So let's react under fire, rolling plus wits. There we go, a strong hit. It says on a strong hit, you succeed and are in control, take +1 momentum. That puts us up to 8. So if we do need to make a big swing, or the stakes are sufficiently high enough, we are now moving into the realms of having momentum that can kind of bail us out of trouble here. So I think the balloon is getting closer, opens fire again. It does some more damage. The wrecking ball underneath this Morning Star thing just kind of smashes a little higher this time. The cabin where the captain's cabin where Gideon and Harrington had that kind of standoff a few days ago now, is just obliterated, just completely smashed to pieces. And that's when Gideon seizes his moment, just as this vampire, this shifting, shadowy form below him, this kind of feral thing, is just about to pounce. Gideon and Lorenzo leap, and they haven't thought this through very much, but they cling on to the chain, the bottom of which is this wrecking ball that is kind of causing all this damage. What their plan is beyond that, like, they haven't thought that many steps ahead. And that vampire on the cargo net immediately like shifts and dissipates into a cloud of bats that goes screeching after the airship, which is now heading towards the submersible. And like, we're going to make a move for the submersible. We're going to go for it. This is the move Gain Ground, which says when you are in control and take action in a fight to reinforce your position or move toward an objective, envision your approach and roll. And I can't see any other option that's more, you know, fitting for this than charging boldly into action, coming to the aid of others, negotiating or commanding. So let's gain ground, rolling plus heart. Wonderful. That is a strong hit, 2 in a row. Good to see. It says on a hit you stay in control, which is great. On a strong hit we get to choose 2 of these options. I think we'll take that +2 momentum and get us right up to max. I can feel a big swing coming. And we'll also mark progress on get Felicity to safety. We are now up to 2 out of 10. I chose to mark progress there because the other way you mark progress principally in a fight is by fighting, and this is going to be more trying to achieve this objective of getting her to safety rather than fighting the Circle of Silent Hands or fighting the vampires and whatnot. We might have to do a little bit of that, but I think, you know, the way that we're going to achieve it is by incrementally marking progress by doing stuff like this. So Gideon lets go of the chain. Lorenzo kind of just behind him, and he hits the deck of the submersible hard, like this bronzed metal ship covered in rivets and funnels and all sorts of gubbins that powers this thing. And now he can see ahead of him the hatch door where Felicity had come out of, and she'd dispatched that soldier who came for her, swinging that giant sword, and now he's on the level with Felicity. You can see behind her there's just like more bodies right in that doorway. She really did kind of fight her way out, all these armored soldiers, and Gideon's just kind of taken in the scene. Felicity's still moving. The handrails around they're all smashed to pieces by the gunfire. There's these char marks of where the cannonballs have hit. And above, he sees the Circle of Silent Hands. The balloon has come to this stop, right? It's just hovering overhead. And he sees, obviously, this wrecking ball is still hanging there, but like these ropes and they, or chains, I guess, and they end with these clamps just come down and just clamp onto the hull, and the devotants who are on board the hot air balloon, the airship, one by one just start kind of sliding down and getting onto the deck, and one of them lands right next to Felicity, right? And he's trying to grab her, and she's trying to fight him off, but even though she's this incredibly powerful woman with this crazy powerful clockwork arm, like she can't even lift it, right? She's so exhausted by the fight that's seen her get this far. And like, I think maybe also this devotant has this kind of clamp that he puts around her arm, almost as if he's trying to kind of neuter her, trying to kind of take away that advantage that she's got. But like, we don't have really time to investigate what's going on. I think Gideon's just going to charge at this devotant and just try and kind of barge them off the ship into the sea. And this is definitely going to be a move, and this move is Strike, which says when you're in control and assault a foe at close quarters, roll plus iron. That's going to be appropriate. We don't have a ranged weapon, and we're going to have to get our hands dirty here. So let's strike, rolling plus iron. Okay, that's a weak hit. It says on a weak hit, you mark progress twice, but you expose yourself to danger. You are in a bad spot. So marking progress twice is going to take us up to 6 out of 10, but we're now in a bad spot. Okay, so I think Gideon does charge forward, and it doesn't take a lot. He just kind of leans into the back of this devotant, and he kind of just smashes into this robed figure and sends them tumbling off the side of the ship and into the water. And he has this moment, he kind of looks down at Felicity, and she is just completely drained, but like, she has this look in her eyes that she's in some way like staggered to see him, but also, and I don't know if this is just Gideon reading into this, like relieved to see him. Yeah, maybe he's reading too much into that, but like, he's here, and he's here for her, right? Which is quite important. And I think that we're not in control anymore. We're in a bad spot, and I think that more of these cables, these chains, these clamps have come down from the balloon, and more of these devotants are coming aboard. And we're in very real danger of being overrun. So I think Gideon reaches into that the hatch door that leads down into the sub, and kind of just finds one of the weapons that one of the bodies has left, just like a blade or something, an axe maybe. And I think he's going to try and like cut well, they're not ropes, but he's going to try and kind of prise the clamps off the hull and kind of maybe try and stop the devotants coming aboard. So this is a move, and this move is Clash. It says when you are in a bad spot and fight back against a foe at close quarters, roll plus iron. And yeah, I think this definitely counts as close quarters, even though the enemies aren't particularly close, but we're kind of using like a melee weapon. So that's what I'll call it. So let's clash. Rolling plus iron. That 10 is not helpful. Otherwise, that would have been a strong hit. But alas, we have a weak hit. It says on a weak hit, you mark progress, but you are dealt a counterblow or setback. You stay in a bad spot and must pay the price. And yeah, I'm complaining about 10s because I can't burn that momentum because it's not going to help me. So let's mark progress first of all. So we're up to 8 out of 10. So we're very quickly getting there, right? So yeah, I think Gideon has got this like axe or hand axe, and he's prizing these clamps off the hull, and he gets one off and just sees it kind of go limp, and Devotant just flies off into the sea, and maybe gets another one off a little as the Devotant is a little closer, and they just can't get their footing and slide down the side into the drink. But there are just too many of them. There's just like maybe like 24 of these Devotants like down on the deck now, and I think that like the bad spot element of this is that we're overrun. We are completely overwhelmed by numbers. They're surrounding us, but also some of them have just ignored us and are rushing straight down into the submarine through that door. And I think the leader has also dropped down onto the deck, and she's kind of stood. She landed like towards the prow of the ship. We see the Perilous Venture in the background, pretty badly battered, and we see her start to slowly walk towards Gideon, Felicity, and Lorenzo, and like we need to get out of here. And like I think Gideon looks back, and also in the door there is, you know, one of the soldiers has a pistol in his belt, and I think Gideon is just gonna have to go for that. I think that's the only way he can get off and to like get out alive. So this is going to be a move. Once again, it's react under fire, which says when you're in a bad spot and take action in a fight to avoid danger or overcome an obstacle, envision your approach and roll. And we are definitely booking it. We're just getting out of here. So let's react under fire, rolling plus edge. Yeah, it's a weak hit. It says on a weak hit, you avoid the worst of the danger or overcome the obstacle, but not without cost, to make a suffer move and stay in a bad spot. This is what I mean about the momentum, even though it feels like a waste to burn momentum on a weak hit. I'm going to do it. I'm going to reset my momentum down to 2 and make this a strong hit, because, you know, we're very nearly at 10 progress, or we're in a decent position with progress. And I just want to get this kind of completed. So this is now a strong hit. Strong hit says you succeed and are in control. Take +1 momentum. So instantly back up to 3. So we are surrounded. The leader is approaching, and I think that she doesn't even want to fuck around. She silently kind of gives this nod to one of the Devotants who's near us to kill Felicity, and by extension probably Gideon as well. And this Devotant steps back with this huge like halberd or a glaive. I don't know the differences between those two things, but like a big, sharp, heavy weapon, right? And he's about to rain this blow down on one or both of us. And then there is this screeching of bats, and as this guy is holding this glaive up, this shape phases in behind him, and we see fangs, we see the hand on the head and neck, and then we see kind of blood spurting out of this guy's jugular, and then the vampire phases back out, and his body slumps down on the ground, and that is the distraction we need. That is the moment we need. And Gideon kind of just dives backwards and rolls towards the hatch and grabs the pistol from the dead army guy's belt loop and just kind of aims it up at the basket of the hot air balloon, or the kind of the hull of this hot air balloon, and just fires. And there's only one crew member up there now, and like Gideon's not a good shot. He doesn't hit this crew member at all, but the shot hits where the crew member is, and sparks kind of fly out, and they are sent sprawling backwards, diving for cover. But the sleeve of their robe gets caught on like one of the levers, and then there's this huge eruption of blue flame as it fills the balloon, and it roars upwards, and those chains and the clamps that are on the submersible, they start kind of ping, 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 pinging off like one by one by one. until there's only one left, and it's the one that's between Gideon and Felicity, and he reaches out and grabs the chain. Lorenzo clamps onto his shoulder, and he reaches out and grabs Felicity's clockwork arm, and they are yanked up into the sky and towards the perilous venture. And now I think we are going to wrap this up and take decisive action. It's a progress move, and it says, when you seize an objective in a fight, envision how you take decisive action and then roll the challenge dice and compare to your progress. Then it says if we're in control, which we are, we check the result as normal. Like, we wanted to get Felicity to safety, and if this goes well, then we have, because we've got her off the submersible. So fingers crossed, everybody. Let's take decisive action, rolling against 8 progress. I will take it. That's a weak hit. It says on a weak hit, you achieve your objective, but not without cost. Roll on the table below or choose an option. If the fight continues, you're in a bad spot. Now, looking at the table, I think there's a really good one. It says, it gets complicated. The true nature of a foe or objective is revealed. So the balloon is like way out of control. It is careening wildly. Its altitude is dropping and rising quickly, and like that crew member who dived out of the way of the shot has nothing, absolutely nothing that he can do to stop them. And they don't hit the sea, they hit the perilous venture. Like, the basket of the balloon smashes through the mast, and the sail catches flames, and bits of it are raining down, wreckage from the balloon, and you know, bits of the mast and the rigging all fall down, and it's all falling down around Harrington, who is kind of stood watching this happen. And as it all, like, the wreckage of the balloon comes to a rest, Harrington watches as Gideon is revealed as a bit of kind of metal hull fuselage, like, falls away. Sees Gideon clutching onto Felicity and Lorenzo clutching onto Gideon. And she's relieved to see that he's made it, relieved to see him staggering to his feet. Like, Felicity is completely out cold, but he's kind of like awkwardly staggering forward. He's got blood streaming out of a cut on his head. And he gets to the side of the boat, and he kind of collapses and is being held up by it. And he looks out to sea. He can see Navini in the background. But between Navini and the perilous venture, the circle are in the sub, and the plumes of black smoke that are belching out of the exhausts as it's fired up lead him to believe that they are now ready to fire upon the perilous venture. And that is just what is about to happen. The turrets with the twin guns slowly rotates towards them. This is it. This is the end. He is sure of it. But then the sub is suddenly obscured by a dense, heavy, fast-shifting mist. Over on the sub, alarms blare as it is forced to dive, forced to submerge and submerge quickly as another vessel cuts through the water towards the venture. We see the bladed prow of Bloodwake bursting through the mist, cutting through the water where the submarine just was, narrowly avoiding collision. Gideon and Harrington watch as Bloodwake closes the distance. A collision and sudden death is now inevitable. This really is it. Gideon laughs to himself, turns to Harrington and says, "Can I take this brief moment to apologize? Your pursuit of that wretched crown has led you all the way out here, led you to this." And he kind of points to the Bloodwake as if that's what he's referring to. But Harrington says, "I'm the one who should apologize, Gideon." And Harrington reaches into her bag, and she pulls out this kind of stick, but it looks like it's kind of papery, I guess. And it's about this long, and she holds it up to the sky and fixes Gideon with a look, and then she twists the handle, and the top of this briefly catches light and then starts to glow in this kind of sulfurous yellow. The plume of smoke starts kind of billowing out of the top of this stick, and then yellow and orange beams of kind of phosphorescent light shoot out like a Catherine wheel. And Harrington says, I was never after the crown. I was after you. But before that sudden dramatic revelation can sink in, the prow of Bloodwake makes contact and smashes the perilous venture into smithereens. The lamp in the lighthouse has shattered, and there are now many soldiers entering the room below. Upstairs, Gideon and the woman still stand in their embrace. Moments ago, they were just two lovers, a world of possibility ahead of them. But now they are two fugitives, hunted, cornered, caught. Gideon rushes over to the bedside cabinet and grabs his pistol, but the woman, still only wearing a loose shawl, stops him from descending the stairs and meeting death head on. She smiles softly at him. Her face is somehow reassuring in this moment of impending doom. And she says, there is still time for you. Go. Gideon says, no. She says, shh. Gideon, my love, I'm not asking. And she pushes him backwards towards an open door, which he stumbles through. She closes it and then drags the heavy bolt across. Gideon is pounding on it from the other side, screaming and hollering to be let back in. But she's not listening. She is now gliding serenely, barefoot, across the floor, towards the top of the stairs where heavy boots begin their ascent. As the boots near and the barking of orders begins, the woman simply stands, her hands folded in front of her. And she closes her eyes, takes a deep breath, and we see her from behind as she is surrounded by armed soldiers shouting and pointing their rifles. The woman lets her shawl fall to the floor, and she stands there in all her naked glory. And we see an intricate pattern come to life, etched into her dark brown skin. It's a star mark. It is glowing powerfully across her entire back. The light emanating from it fills the room with a blinding flash. And then one of Gideon's eyes slowly creaks open. Lorenzo is laying in front of him, his little monkey hands and his little monkey feet tied with twine. Gideon goes to sit up and feels suddenly that broken rib and the pain across his side, and he reaches up to see if his head is still bleeding, and that's when he realizes that whilst his head isn't bleeding anymore, that wound has been somehow staunched. His hands are tied. His vision is blurry, his ears are ringing. He's on a ship, or at the very least he's on a deck, a wooden deck. But he doesn't feel like he's on a ship somehow. Like, he is sort of moving as if he's on the open sea, but this doesn't look like a boat. But then it is also dark. He's no idea how much time has passed. Like, he's been captured, that much is clear. But by whom? Harrington, maybe? I mean, she did say that thing about how she was sent after him and not the crown. But he's all of a sudden not sure if that was real or not. Was that some hallucination brought on by a serious head injury? He tries to stand, but is unsuccessful. He manages to just about get to his knees, and that allows him to get a slightly better grasp on his surroundings. He can see people. There are people all around him. He's perhaps in a circular room. It's lit by torchlight, but actually, no, it's not a room, because the other thing he can see is the twin fates in the sky. It's all quite confusing. Hey, audience, I see you there, wondering what's going on. Well, let me tell you what's going on. Gideon doesn't know this, but you deserve to know. I was revisiting my truths, as I am wont to do occasionally, and I was just looking to see if I was doing them justice, or if I'd strayed too far from any of them, or if there was any of them that I'd perhaps not touched on or investigated. And doing so made me look at the truth that I'd established in session 0 about piracy. And I had specifically chosen all the way back in that session 0 the truth that said, the Marauder clan sail under the command of the Dread Court, a conclave of 8 veteran pirates whose shrewd tactics position this nation of cutthroats as a rising power. Once each year, the pirate fleets gather at a port called Flotsam, an artificial island built from the husks of captured and ruined ships, to pay homage to the court and make plans. Well, gang, here we are. That is where we are. We are on Flotsam. We have been captured and brought to the Dread Court, for whom we can assume that Harrington is working. And she was apparently tasked with finding Gideon. Why? Well, Gideon is starting to figure out his surroundings. He is at the center of a cobbled together island made of bits of wood, right? But the island has lines drawn on them in maybe chalk or maybe paint. 8 lines drawn from the outside to the center, as if it's the points of a compass meeting in the middle, and he is kneeling at the convergence of these 8 points. At the other end of each line is a group of people, and he can see them in silhouette, and he kind of starts to scan them one by one. There are 8 lines, but there are only 7 groups, and there's one line that leads to an empty space where there is no one. There is an absence of people. He has no idea what this place is. It sure is very strange. But I think ultimately he's just pleased he's not dead. And after a moment or two, there is the sound of a heavy object being kind of banged on the floor, as if to call for quiet so proceedings can begin. And begin they do. A hush descends as if on command. Gideon can feel all eyes on him. He shares an anxious look with Lorenzo, and a man's voice comes out of the darkness and says, "Speak and make it quick." Gideon is confused. He doesn't know what he's about to say, and he's about to think of something and bullshit, but Harrington appears at his side and whispers to him, "Not you. Stay quiet." She's dressed very elaborately again. Remember when we first met her, she was dressed way too elaborately to be on a research vessel or to be on any sort of ship. And she is decked out like that again, with this kind of pluming, billowing, frilled shirt in a kind of like a salmon pink, and these almost like jodhpurs and knee-high leather boots. She looks resplendent, but completely out of place once again. She says, "It has taken several months and required a not insignificant share of good fortune, but..." And she reaches down, grabs Gideon's hands, takes out a knife and cuts his bonds, cuts his bandages away, and she holds his arm up and shows everyone the star mark. The moonlight catches it. It barely glimmers, but it's there. You can see it. They know exactly what it is and exactly what it means. Harrington continues, "And I must note that, was it not for my intervention, we could have met a very different end." And she is throwing shade here. She is throwing shade very specifically to the empty spot at the outside of this strange floating island, the space where there is an absence of people. And just as she throws that shade, there is The sound of fluttering, screeching bats. And then we see that phasing, that shifting of light and shadow. And we see the captain of the night ships, Esmeralda O'Rourke, finally take form, reclining languidly in a makeshift throne made of lobster traps and fishing nets. She leans into the moonlight, which picks out her stunningly beautiful features. She has, or had when she was alive, a kind of a light brown skin, which is now fairly pallid but smooth. She has these flowing black curls that tumble down over one eye. And she says, "Sorry for the dramatic entrance. I do get carried away." And she winks at Gideon and says, "It's been a while, Mr. Finch." And like she's dead, right? But she still has it going on in a conventional sense. And whilst we don't know what happened between Gideon and Esmeralda O'Rourke after he stole the crown of tides the first time, please watch the live show, that's where you'll find out about it. Whatever it was clearly significant. Harrington continues, "Was I suddenly deemed untrustworthy, incapable of fulfilling this quest alone?" And the voice says, "Don't forget your place." Oh, hang on. I need a name quickly. 72 is Webb. "Don't forget your place, Webb. Yours is not to question our methods. If we wish to ensure the job is complete, that is our prerogative." And the owner of that voice stands up and comes forward, and we can hear him approach, like two dull metallic thuds accompanying each solitary heavy footstep. Gideon looks up to see a hulking brute of a man towering over him. His pale skin is pockmarked and patchy. His greying beard is thick and bristling on the chin of an otherwise completely bald head, a head that is marked with gnarly scars all over. His hands are huge like coal shovels, and one of them holds an enormous brass harpoon, which he uses to walk. He uses it as a walking stick. And he uses it as a walking stick on account of the fact that he is missing a leg. And the leg, the stump just ends, not in a wooden peg leg, it ends in a length of lead pipe. This man's dark eyes narrow on Gideon, scrutinizing him. Lorenzo whimpers in fear. Gideon says, "I'm terribly sorry. I usually stand when I receive company, but I feel somewhat reticent to assume the etiquette you fine people might follow." And the man ignores this bullshit, right, this stalling, and drops something on the floor in front of Gideon. It's a piece of parchment, and it's folded into four. Gideon isn't sure if it's for him, but kind of assumes it is, so reaches out and opens it and looks at it, and his face drops. Even though it is dark and this whole scene is illuminated only by a few dozen torches and the last of the night's moons, Gideon can tell instantly what it is. It's a charcoal sketch. It's a charcoal sketch of something that's very familiar to him, something that haunts his dreams, something he has not seen in years. It's a sketch of a star mark, but not his. The star mark that belonged to her, the woman in the lighthouse. "Where did you get this?" "So, it is true. Where did you get this?" The man smiles, and there is a murmur of excitement around the court. Gideon hears footsteps approach from behind, and he turns to see someone else bound being marched in and pushed to the floor. It's Felicity. She hangs her head. She looks defeated. She looks thoroughly spent. But the main thing that Gideon notices about her is that her arm is missing. The person who marched her in shares a quick, quiet word in the ear of the huge man standing over Gideon. He laughs and leans in and says, "Looks like we have a job for you. Both of you." Gideon looks across at Felicity. The man reaches a hand towards Gideon and directs his gaze back at him. But Gideon feels a metallic touch. The man is using Felicity's clockwork prosthetic, using it to illustrate his point, using it to get Gideon's attention. And the man says, "Now tell me, have you ever heard of the Gold Crest Trading Company?" Gideon's heart and soul sinks. He didn't think it could get much worse than this, but the hits just keep on coming. He looks at Felicity, who's broken, beaten. He looks at Harrington, or Webb as she's now known, his betrayer. He looks at Esmeralda O'Rourke, watching on with devilish glee. And he says, "I sure can pick 'em." Thank you a million times. Thank you for watching. Please like this video, subscribe if you've not done so already, and click the little bell icon so you can be notified as soon as the next video drops. I'll be back next time, but until then, it is farewell and safe passage.